This episode is brought to you by Blockdaemon. You'll be hearing all about them later from me later in the episode, but now, on with the show. All right, everyone, welcome back to another weekly roundup edition of On the Margin. Today, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Mark Yusko. Mark, welcome to the show.
You know, I was just thinking, Michael sounded a little tired, and you skipped the adjective.
I skipped the adjective. I knew.
Something tells me this has been a big week. Like this is like a beatdown week, which we will get to. So quick things. So the orange pants are back, baby. We are going to single-handedly. All right, and I got Uncle Bam, Bitcoin as money. Okay, magic internet money, Bitcoin wizard. It says join us. Right, we are recruiting for the army. It is time to fight back against the perpetrators of this vicious attack on our ecosystem. And so it wasn't an attack on Bitcoin. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was an attack on all of it. And lots of stuff to talk about. But the wizard needs your help.
Is there, Mark? Did something happen this week? Is there something that you feel like we should cover?
Well, I mean, one or two things.
Did anything stand out to you? Yeah, I don't know. Crazy week, I gotta say. I mean, even for someone who I haven't, I'm not one of the OGs, been here since 2010 or whatever. But I've got to say, I've never seen anything in this crazy for me. It's nuts.
Yeah, this harkens back to really serious economic crises of our past. I mean, I wasn't around, even though I kind of look like it sometimes. I wasn't around for the 29 crash. And I was not, really trading markets very heavily at 10 years old in the 73 crash. But, the 81, 82 recession, I noticed, right? I mean, I was still young, but it hit my family hard. We lived in Seattle. There's a big billboard, with the last person to leave Seattle, please turn out the lights. And I mean, it was bad. And that was the result of Fed errors, Volcker double dipping on how he measured inflation and, crushing the back of inflation. Well, he crushed the back of the economy and people's lives. And this week, it's sobering for me because I've seen this before. I saw it in 87. People got wiped out. And sadly, and I don't even like to talk about it, I mean, people took their lives, right? I mean, families broke up, marriages broke up, companies shut down, and that just happened this week. And I believe, and I strongly believe this, and I won't point fingers at any individual because they've denied it, but this was a deliberate attack. This was well thought out, and the fact that all these regulations are being, proposed the day after, we need to regulate stablecoins. Well, the problem is Luna and Terra and Anchor was not a stable coin. It was an unstable coin. There's nothing stable about it. So it's scary to me. Now, the thing this morning, if you deposit the money with the Fed, we'll leave you alone. Are you kidding me? That's the exact reason we're creating this ecosystem, is to move away from the fiat fiasco that y'all have created. So anyway, so many things to talk about.
It's, I was speaking to someone who oversees crypto investments for a sovereign wealth fund, and I asked him, I was like, what's your take on this, looking at this whole situation? And his response was, I cut my teeth during the Asian currency crisis, and this reminds me exactly of that. So I thought that was an interesting bit of perspective. But I'm sure viewers or listeners will be aware of what happened this week. But just to give you a synopsis of what happened, there was a pretty unprecedented collapse in the Luna Terra ecosystem right here, and UST. I don't know what the peg is currently trading at, but last time I looked last night, it was like 10 cents.
9 cents. It's
9 cents.
Luna is 0.00002 cents.
Yeah. So for those who are listening who might not be aware, there are a couple different models. So let's just go into the models of like how do different stable coins work? How are they collateralized, right? there's one which is the safest model, right? Which is you put dollars in a box, you get out an IOU, right? A crypto dollar IOU, right? That's the Tether and the USDC model, right? Fully collateralized by US dollars. Then there is the crypto collateralized version. This is like a MakerDAO type stablecoin where you don't put a dollar into the box, but you actually put crypto collateral, so Bitcoin, Ether, into a smart contract. You over collateralize it, and then you can mint stables, right? And that's good. That's a good system as well. There are some drawbacks to it, but there are definitely pros to it as well. Then there is what is known as the seigniorage model, and that's what Luna was using. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than this, but the way that I think about it is you essentially have a stablecoin which is backed by nothing except for the equity of the stablecoin network. And that is what Luna was. By the way, if you saw it going up and down, that is essentially the network equity of UST, the token. And the way that was enforced was, you had to peg UST, the stablecoin, to the value of $1, and there was an arbitrage mechanism, right? Whereas if the value of UST fell below $1, what you could do is on the protocol level you could swap, or it's called like burning, right? You could swap like a 99-cent UST in for $1 of Luna, sell it to the market, and that kind of balanced out the peg. This all started to wobble and come apart this past weekend, right? So it was kind of wobbling on Sunday night. It was like around 98 cents, something like that. And, there's like a bunch of conspiracy theories on Twitter, right? Like a lot of you have probably heard that Citadel and BlackRock were behind this. Mark, I don't know what you think. It seems very unlikely that they were.
I said I wasn't going to name names, but look, this was a concerted attack. And it requires somebody of means. I believe it was absolutely tied to the establishment. And again, I'm not going to name any names. But when people deny things vehemently, that actually makes me nervous. So, it's the lady doth protest too much, methinks. So, and it was it's not a coincidence that Ms. Yellen the next day, like literally the next morning, after the big collapse, was out saying, "Oh, well, we need to regulate these things. We need to supervise these things." And then this morning they're like, "Well, if you deposit your money in the Fed, we'll leave you alone." So whether it was one of those two firms or another, or a conglomeration or one of the dark pools, right? There's plenty of dark pool money out there. The Luna group, very publicly said, "Oh, we're buying all this Bitcoin, and we're going to use it to collateralize." Well, wait a second. You're using an 80 vol asset to collateralize a stable coin? Seriously? Really? I mean, because that's the number go up thing. Well, if the number only goes up, then it'll work. Well, guess what? If it goes down and goes down sharply, you're going to be then forced to sell the Bitcoin, which is going to push it down further. So, whoever did this not only achieved their goal, which was to put this thing, out of business, but they also probably made about $1 billion in doing it.
Yeah, they made a tremendous amount of money. I mean, just to give listeners some context on the scale of what happened. I mean, we're talking about, let's say, depending on how real you thought this economic value was, quote unquote, we're talking about almost an Enron style collapse of economic value, right, in scale between the value of UST and the equity value of Luna. And in terms of the profit that the attacker made, this is something on the scale of like George Soros' attack on the Bank of England, right? Black Wednesday. I mean, this is pretty. This is pretty.
And to that point, Michael,
stuff.
Again, I love that you're a student history, right? This was exactly what Soros did to attack a floating currency, right?
Right.
And that's the problem. A stable coin can't be floating relative to other things that are floating, because then like the Malaysian ringgit or any other coin, you can be attacked. And look, we don't want to spend all of our time on this, but I do think it's a big deal, and it's why I said it's why I'm wearing the socks. It's why, one, Bitcoin is different than these other things. It is money, right? It is an asset that exists in the absence of a liability, unlike these other structures that are basically derivative structures. So that's one thing, is you got to have some somewhere. And now another thing we'll probably talk about, because again, little thing that happened. There's been a little bit of a run on the bank at places like Coinbase and other exchanges, because people are freaking out. They're like, oh, not my keys, not my coins. Well, look, banks work really well until there's a run on them. And this past week reminds me, and I've actually been tweeting this out, and I wrote a long letter about this. I mean, I don't know, 40 plus pages about this a couple of years ago. This reminds me of the Knickerbocker Panic of 1907. And basically, J.P. Morgan, owned banking. Right? J.P. Morgan was the big bank. He was the big banker. He was very well connected politically, rich guy, and best buddies with John D. Rockefeller, another rich guy, Robert Barron. It's not a very nice term, actually. Think about that. We deify these people like Robert Barron.
I know.
It's not a very nice term. I mean,
no, it's not at all.
And John D. Rockefeller, yes, his foundation does a lot of nice stuff, but he wasn't really a very nice person. And arguably, according to history, he disappeared hundreds of people. Like people would strike against his factories and they would vanish. And it turns out you don't get investigated if you're really rich. So anyway, J.P. Morgan famously quoted that I like a little competition. Okay, keyword little. And so there was a law passed that said the banks were getting too powerful and they were controlled by the elites and the wealthiest families from Europe, Rothschilds, et cetera. And so they said, oh, we're going to pass a law. We're going to have some competition of these trusts. So they authorized these trusts, and the Knickerbocker Trust. It's literally like the story that was done later. It's a Wonderful Life, the movie, about Mr. Potter and the bank and the building and loan, right? This nice trust company. And long story short, Knickerbocker Trust was starting to take share away from Mr. Morgan. So he spread some rumors, shall we say, that maybe your money wasn't safe. And there's the famous picture, you can look at it on Wikipedia, of a bank run. Right, people with the umbrellas and the top, everyone's in their coats and hats and suit and dresses and heels, and everybody's dressed up because that's how you walked around back in the 20s or in the 1900s. And long story short, the run on the bank was successful, and shockingly, I know this will shock you, Michael, J.P. Morgan got to buy the assets for pennies on the dollar. And here we are this morning. J.P. Morgan talking about similar stuff for stablecoin industry. Shocking.
Yeah, it's there are a couple of and just to finish up the story of mechanically how this worked. There's a great thread put together by a guy named On-Chain Wizard who explains this. But
Magic Internet Money Wizard. There we go.
Yeah,
how perfect is that?
Yeah. Right. It was a sophisticated attack that happened, right? Because the last part of the story is there was a transition going on between the 3 pool and the 4 pool. Right. Those are pools on Curve, and Curve is the exchange for stable coins, stable swap exchange. And 3 pool was kind of the dominant liquidity pool for 3 major stables, right? And that was UST. USDT, so it's Tether, DAI, and USDC, right? And then there was going to be a switch, right, to the 4 pool, right, which was kind of pioneered by Do Kwon, and then that was going to be UST, Frax, USDC, and USDC. So there was this big transition, and the attack was actually launched at the same time that there was like 150 million of liquidity that was withdrawn from the 3 pool was going to go into the 4 pool, and when liquidity was low, that's when all this selling began. And it was a sophisticated attack as well because they had to accumulate a large position of Bitcoin, right? And they're selling into UST. They had to accumulate a lot of Bitcoin, a lot of UST, sell short at a time when they knew there was low liquidity. It was a sophisticated attack. A lot of money was made.
Incredible.
I think for me, I think I have a couple ways of looking at this, and I'll pose this as an open question to you. There's this Bethany McLean line that
who's one of the great writers of our age. Full stop.
Of our age.
Full stop.
She's amazing.
She's amazing.
Every time I say this, and I'm like, do you know Bethany McLean? I'm like a Bethany McLean chill. I'm like, do you know her? You should look her up.
Yeah.
But it said the line between a visionary and a fraud is very thin. And, when it comes to like these seniorage models for stablecoins in Luna, there have always been some people who are like, this is not possible as a model. This is simply impossible. We want a decentralized algorithmic stablecoin, but this is simply not going to work. Nope. And this is an experiment that is reckless. And when it fails, inevitably, the regulators are going to take it and use it as a stick to beat the industry with. Then there's kind of the other side of this, which is like, guys, look, we need to be able to experiment. And one of the big problems with the financial system as it exists today is that it's overregulated, it is stunted innovation, it's encouraged regulatory capture, and there's not much ability to grow. That's why it's this disgusting, broken old system. So this is kind of the flip side of that. So if you want the speed of innovation that you get in the tech industry, this is kind of what you're going to get. So where do you fall on that line, Mark? Like how like between allowing innovation and like maybe this in hindsight, this is looking pretty irresponsible.
No. So again, such brilliant analysis, and I talk about this all the time, and I'm more acutely aware of it this week because on Wednesday I did my annual thing with I have this scholarship program and meet with the scholars, the seniors who are graduating. Just a little plug for our program. We got another valedictorian. We've had 4 out of the last 8 valedictorians at Notre Dame.
Let's go.
Which is pretty amazing. These kids are amazing. And, one of the things we talk about, there's this essay. You should read this essay if you haven't read it, called Solitude and Leadership by this guy, William Deresiewicz. And everyone should read it, actually. And he basically talks about our society is broken in one way, in that we've taught people to value answers rather than questions, right? It's not enough to say, oh, that person's hungry and I'm going to go work at the food kitchen and help feed them. You need to ask, why does hunger exist? How can we live in a country where we spend $20 billion a year on weight loss and people go to bed hungry every night? It's clearly a surfeit of calories. That's not the problem. So why? And so asking questions is way more important than regurgitating answers. And one of the things you do probably as well as anyone I know is you formulate thoughtful, meaningful questions that we can talk about. And that's one of the greatest superpowers to have. Because if you ask people their opinion, most people will just parrot something else they heard. They haven't actually thought. So you've actually sat back and thought about this issue, not for hours and hours and hours, but you at least did some thinking rather than just pull a thing off Reddit or whatever and say, oh, that's what I heard about this. So if you think about this, look, the whole tech thing, well, it's not broken. Let's break it and let's see if we can do something different. Okay, that's fine if you're talking about social media, which maybe we need or don't need, or maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's not. That's fine if you're talking about changing a non-critical infrastructure technology, where we have time. But you probably don't want to mess with the sewer system, right? I mean, it's worked pretty well for thousands of years, and we can make improvements here and there, but we can't just break the whole thing and then test out something new. So I do believe all the things you said about regulatory capture and power and control are all what government and too much government, right? Big government, it's like the oxymoron. I mean, it's jumbo shrimp, military intelligence. And actually, in the military, there's plenty of smart people in the military. I don't even like to use that one. But I do believe that there is this problem right now that financial services has been devoid of real innovation That's not actually not really fair. There have been lots of innovations, derivatives and other things. And they do cause breakage, right? The derivative problem with Orange County, and thinking they had AAA, and then there's the CDO stuff. And actually, someone made a good point. I know this is a long ramble, but I'll get to your point. There's a great line about all this UST was the CDO model from the global financial crisis, retread, but now faster and easier to break because it was out in the public and not centrally controlled. So I was like, ooh, yeah, that's probably true. So real innovation is really important. And we've been talking about this for a long time on this show and independently on our Twitter feeds. And, what the internet did to media and commerce, right, caused a lot of disruption, a lot of breakage, a lot of market cap disappeared and went to other places. It's good, right? We're better for it.
Yeah.
That's what blockchain does to financial services. Now, part of the challenge in financial services is it is part and parcel at the root of everything we do. So, I think I've made this comment on the show a couple of times, right? Problem with fintech is there was no tech. I mean, we're using 80, 90-year-old technology, Fedwire, banks, ACH, Visa. They work perfectly well, kind of, most of the time. But fintech is just putting a better UI, UX on these old rails. Now we're talking about building new rails and doing new things. And I think that's all really, really good. But the incumbents don't like it. They don't like it at all. And we've talked about this too, right? Is 2009, and it was not a coincidence, that Bitcoin was born in 2009, right at the heart of the global financial crisis. Mm-hmm. That was not an accident. Right? Just like it's not an accident Satoshi's birthday is 4/5/75, right? When gold was made illegal, 4/5, and then 75 when it was reinstated. Those aren't accidents. So, but no one cared. 2009 to 2015, we ignore you. Yeah. You're geeks, you're nerds, you're small, we don't care about you, you don't threaten us. 2016 to 21, they laugh at you. Bunch of geeks and nerds and this stupid magic internet money, my socks. I mean, we don't care. Last year, now we fight you. Mm-hmm. And this fight is just getting started. It's just getting started. And this attack, I believe, came directly from those incumbents as an attack to damage the credibility, to try to put some of the combatants in the hospital or disappear them. And I think this is going to get real. And it's not going to go away in a week or a month. This is going to be years of this nonsense.
What do you think about the idea, like let's say it was some concerted attack. I mean, as crypto grows up, I've always kind of conceptualized crypto in general as a startup. It's like it's still very young and scrappy, and even like the Bitcoin kind of ethos, right? Like it's got to kind of throw some elbows, get its name out there, do that kind of grassroots marketing. But crypto has ascended to the world stage, and in many ways it has to mature. And I think it has to do that in a couple of different ways. I think it has to do it in the form of its rhetoric. I've always kind of believed that, and I also think it needs to, like, if you want to play with the big boys, then the big boys don't always play super nice.
No, and they do not.
Like, you kind of have to expect these sorts of attacks, and you need to get ready that if you create a whole bunch of value, people are going to try to take that value away from you. And I don't know. What do you think about that? Kind of?
Michael, again, just perfect analysis. But even more, not only if you create the value, will they try to take it? They're going to try to stop you from taking their stuff. Right? Look, I always marvel. I mean, I really do marvel because I don't understand how it happened. ABC, NBC, CBS, they owned everything. They owned our eyeballs. They owned our time.
I know.
We lived on their schedule. They had all the ad money.
I know.
They could have easily transitioned to the digital age, become streaming companies. How did they not? how did Netflix win? It's unbelievable. It's that resistance to innovation. It's, I don't want to break what I already have. But boy, when they started, when Netflix started, people tried to put them out of business. Netflix almost went bankrupt twice, right? And they try to pass laws. I mean, when the internet started, the phone companies were like, voice over internet for free? Are you joking? I like charging $3 to call your mom in London. I'm not a minute, not an hour, a minute, $3 a minute. Or, my mom and dad used to freak. I had a long distance girlfriend and we'd talk 3-4 hours, literally saying nothing. What are you doing? Nothing. What are you doing? Nothing. What are you doing?
What'd you have for breakfast?
Yeah, what'd you have for breakfast?
What'd you have for lunch?
Yeah. And like 3 or 4 hours. And then my parents would get a $200 phone bill and they'd be like, your allowance is like $10. What are you thinking? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? You have to pay for that? You don't have to pay for that. It's free. It's a phone. But so what do? They literally tried to pass laws to stop voice over internet protocol. We're using it right now. Voice over internet protocol is a pretty good thing, right? So look, this fight is real, and innovators are going to innovate. But I love your quote, and again, just bringing history into the present. The line between, or Bethany's line, right? The line between visionary and fraudster is razor thin. It's like genius and madness, right? It's just on the edge. And the people that we think are geniuses, maybe there's a little madness. And we talk about people on the spectrum and how can they be so smart? Well, because they're not burdened by all the other stuff that we all care about and think about. Michael Burry, he doesn't really give a crap what you and I or anybody else thinks about him. He's going to tell it like it is, and he's going to, do one of the greatest trades in the history of finance.
Speaking of Michael Burry, I hadn't planned this, but I was just thinking about this. I think we can pretty safely say crypto is in a bear market, right? We're like, are we in it? Are we not in it? We're in a bear market now.
You know how much crap I have taken for saying the word crypto winter on this show, like 6-7 months ago.
Yeah, you were dead right.
Oh my God,
dead right. Yeah, and
I'm not trying to take a victory lap. I don't like the crypto winter. I don't like bear markets, but the idea that the cycle was eradicated and that greed and fear would be eradicated, just crazy.
This episode is brought to you by Blockdaemon, the world's leading blockchain infrastructure platform. Blockdaemon's mission is simple. Make spinning up a node so easy a 5-year-old could do it, and so secure that any chief compliance officer in the world could sleep easy at night. In plain English, Blockdaemon allows anyone, whether you're a crypto native fund, a financial institution, a DeFi protocol, whatever, to participate in crypto more safely. For some, that can mean participating in governance. It could mean gathering real-time and accurate data. It could mean generating yield through staking. Whatever it is, when it comes to crypto, infrastructure is edge, and there's simply no better edge offered than the one from Blockdaemon. Blockdaemon supports a range of services on over 50 protocols, and that's a growing list. They have multiple layers of risk mitigation that include regional and data center diversity, 24/7 human and automated monitoring, a full-service team of engineers to avoid technical difficulties, and things like slashing insurance. In other words, they literally make it foolproof. If your organization relies on real-time, accurate data that comes from blockchains, please, please, please click the link at the bottom of this episode and go check them out. Again, it's important. Gotta click the link at the bottom, otherwise I won't get my credit. I'm with you on it. Yeah, you were totally right about it. So here's what I think let's do. If you just joined crypto, because there are a bunch of people that came into this industry, right? We know this is how it works. The cycle goes up, media attention goes up, money goes up, brings a whole bunch of people into the industry, and then successively like 25, 30% of them will quit. So I thought here's what we could do is like talk about what it's like, what to expect going into a bear market, what you can be prepared for and how you cannot leave. Because I firmly believe just find a way to not quit during the bear market, and that is success. So I was creating
Michael,
a list of things.
It's so funny you say it because I think you never know who you're buying from, but people were giving me a little shit. that, you're the buy it guy. You're on TV and you say, when the price goes down, buy it. I'm like, well, the way my fund works is we buy on a schedule and we really do more private stuff. But I was like, yep, I deserve that. So I went to a couple spaces yesterday, like totally different. One was much more crypto broadly. Some would say, shitcoin stuff. The other was pure toxic Bitcoiners. And I was kind of hanging with a bunch of different people, listening to the perspectives, and it inspired me, right? And because these were people, there's one guy who's great. He's a long haul trucker. I mean, like just a real person, right? And he's out there talking about how this has changed his life and how he's spending all his time figuring out how he can stack sats. And he's talking about how he figured out how you can put 50 cents in with no cost. I'm like, damn it. Okay. So last night, logged onto my Coinbase account, partly to make sure it still worked. I'm just kidding. Because there's been a little tack on Coinbase. And
we got to talk about Coinbase.
No, we will. And it worked flawlessly. And man, I bought some stuff. And I always think about who's selling to me. To your point, if it's someone who's leaving because they're disillusioned, I'm like, oh God, please don't sell to me. What I want is I want the whales to sell to me because I want them to have less. And I don't mean I want them to have less. I don't want to take their stuff away. I want more people to own. And that was one of the things I was talking about. What I would love to do is find a way to create the equivalent of on-chain monkeys. I don't know if you know on-chain monkeys, but it's this really cool community. You buy an NFT to be part of the community. And then the currency in the community is bananas, right? Monkeys and bananas. And when someone does something to help humanity and you observe another member, you say rise. And I can't remember, I should know what rise stands for, but it's something. And that triggers that person getting bananas. And I'm like, why can't we do that with Bitcoin? Why couldn't we have a system where when we see someone do something good for the world, we can give them sats, like instantly? And I was like, yes, that would be awesome. And you can if they have if they have strike but I was like, that would be cool. So anyway, I forgot what you asked me.
Bear market signs.
Oh, bear market.
Here's my.
How do you stay in it? Yeah, and what to expect.
Yeah, and here's my list of things that will happen. So first of all, you will see crypto OGs capitulate. And that's already, and actually Jason and I have a great episode. It's either coming out today or it's coming out maybe next week with Richard Crabe. I don't know if maybe folks will be familiar with him. Got in on the Ethereum ICO crowd sale. He has this hedge fund called Numerai. It's got a crypto component. There's its own NMR, and he released this video on Twitter saying, "Hey, I'm selling all of my crypto." So there's a little chat, but there will be more of that, right? And you'll question, say these OGs are selling. Should I be selling too? Should I be getting out? Every mainstream media outlet that was positive on crypto, looked like they were going to be, is going to reverse. Yep. And you're going to start to get these thought pieces. Like you're already starting to see this. Here's a title that was shared by a pretty prominent person: "The ticking time bomb of crypto fascism." Right. So you're gonna start to see a lot more thought pieces like that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You're going to see the return of enterprise blockchain is going to make a comeback. I'm just going to call it now. Like people are going to start talking about.
Michael, I almost wore my. I was going back and forth. I almost wore my Bitcoin, not blockchain socks this morning.
Yeah, it would have been perfect because I can promise you there's going to be, see, this is why we like the technology and not the cryptos. Yeah. And supply chain makes a lot of sense, and medical records and all that stuff. That stuff's making a comeback for sure. Right. Record amount of regulatory FUD. Oof. You're going to see this is going to be illegal. Blah, blah, blah. There's going to be, and that might actually have some teeth.
And it's going to be more than FUD, right? There's going to be a massive amount of regulation, like real regulations will be passed to try to slow this down. Because it's real, right? And it was like, oh, but we just lost, $1.7 trillion of value. Like, yep. But that doesn't mean it's over. And it will get recaptured. And it's funny. Someone's tried to say that that was the equivalent of the subprime debacle, and that's going to be the catalyst that brings down the economic system, just like the global financial crisis. I'm like, dude, FANG has lost twice that.
Yeah.
Twice. I say FANG man. 7 stocks, which are way more widely held and have way more influence than crypto. I mean, as influential as crypto is, and as important as it is, and as important as it will be, it's kind of like Twitter, right? I mean, Twitter is used by 4% of people on the planet. I mean, it's important to us, and it's where we meet friends, and it's where we exchange ideas, and now with this whole thing about it's where free speech is going to go to live instead of die. 96% of people in the world don't use it. So probably not where free speech, probably newspapers and media is probably more important. Not that it's not important to have free speech on Twitter. It is. And we need that. But I don't know. I 100% agree with you. We are in for the fight of our lives. And it happens to coincide. It's like when cycles line up. There's a 18-month cycle and a 6-year cycle and a 30-year cycle and a 90-year cycle. The 90-year cycle is the one we should be worried about, right? 1837, there was a depression. 1930, there was a depression. Yeah, that's why I don't like that D word. But so we are 90 years after the last depression, and 92-ish. But anyway, how do you survive it? How do you stay with it? Well, a couple ways. One, I was on a thing yesterday with this guy Matthew Rozek. And we're chatting, and I'm doing my usual thing. I talk too much. I take too much airtime, and I know you don't agree with me on that, but
I do. Yeah,
but crazy talk. So then Matthew's there, and he said a couple things, and so I'm scrolling last night, and I come across this TED talk that he did, like from 4 years ago.
So long ago.
4 years.
He's an OG. He's been in it for a while.
He was doing it when the market cap of Bitcoin was 70 billion, 70. Mm-hmm. And I tweeted out, I'm like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. I was on with this guy's brilliant mind. Why didn't I just shut up? It's like I should do with you. I should just shut up and listen. When you have a brilliant mind on the screen with you, just listen. And I was like, I'm an idiot. So that was really funny.
He's an OG. He red pilled personally a lot of the people in Silicon Valley, gave them their first Bitcoin. And I think, man, I don't want to say, I think he might have done it for Mark Andreessen. Matt, I might be giving you too much, but some people of that scale, he's been a great advocate for the space. I think for me, the things that I would think about is, that thing that you are the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
100%.
Like
100%.
I think the biggest thing that
Choose
will
wisely.
make you stick around in this industry is who you spend your time with. Yeah. Because there were a lot of people over the course of the last 18 months that convinced themselves that they believed in this and wanted to build something, and they weren't. They were in it for the money. And you can already see who those people are, right? There were these people who were on Twitter now, and they're kind of they were like looking like they were positive to it. Now they're doing their victory laps on why it doesn't work. And to be fair, the industry got way ahead of itself. We are going to have to answer a lot of hard questions and rethink stuff that we thought was working, but that's okay. That's healthy.
No, but what I was going to say is, I watched this snippet of this TED talk, and what he talked about was how he came to it. He said, I literally locked myself in my house, turned off everything, and spent 24 hours researching blockchain. And that's when I saw the light. He says, everyone needs to do a blockchain day. I was like, you know what? Yes. And so I tweeted that out. I said, look, the world would be a better place faster if everybody did this. Pick a day, weekday, take a day off, a mental health day, whatever, weekend day, and literally spend 24 hours diving deeply into blockchain technology, Bitcoin, crypto, all of these things that are going to be the new financial system, and see the light, right? Orange pill yourself. And I think that is really, really important. So education, go to lop.net, right? He's already put all the stuff together. So you don't even have to go search for it. I mean, it's all right there. And also, to your point on the 5 people you spend the most time with, it's not just physical time. It's who you listen to and who you surround yourself with. So you need to curate your Twitter stream. You need to find the Matthew Raj. How do you say his last name?
Rozak.
Rozak. You have to find the Matthews. And, Michael Saylor, some people like him, some people don't. The guy's a genius. I mean, just is. So listening to him, and, you can, I think with Michael, you got to listen and be critical thinker about what he's saying. You can't just take it all as gospel, but he is a genius. So I do love listening to him. But spend time with people. Too. Watch this show. Clearly, this show will help.
You should. Yeah, I really do believe that, and I hope. The reason I'm saying this is not to be like a doom and gloom sayer. It's just like I wish someone had told me that because we started Blockworks in the peak of 2017 and kind of watched it, and we obviously stuck around. But I mean, watching that much break kind of made me, I think, more cynical on the way down, and I didn't have as much faith that parts of this ecosystem could work on the way back up, and I just think I was behind.
You're human? Yeah. Are you joking? Yeah. You're not a Borg. Yeah. You have emotions. I mean, this is hard right now. It's super hard because, to your point, the media is trying to convince you that this is a bad thing. And it's bad for you. It's bad for society. It's bad. Who it's bad for?
Bad for society. That's the one that cracks me up, honestly.
Well, it's bad for society with a capital S, right? The people at the top of the little pyramid, the all-seeing eye people. It ain't bad. Well, actually, those little s society. It ain't bad for society as a whole. It's good for society as a whole, but definitely for high society. This is bad because it's taken away their power, and I think when media is going to fill the world with FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, when you're going to see real pain and suffering, right? There are people, like I said, there are people that are having bad thoughts, deep dark thoughts, and again, if anyone's happened to be watching this and you're having those thoughts, please reach out to somebody. And everyone on the call or watching us, we all know someone who's hurting right now. And don't wait for them to call you. Call them. I would say when people tweet out the hotline number, like the suicide hotline stuff, that makes me angry a little bit. I'm like, no, be the hotline. Call the people. Like reach out to people who are at risk. But this is real. You're going to see that. And people are going to talk about it, and people are going to, hate to say, almost glamorize it because that stokes fear, and fear is very powerful. And once fear takes over, and I think that's what we saw this week, people it's hard to stand up to it.
Yeah, you know what a funny example of fear is. So our newsletter writer, very knowledgeable guy, Byron, he was telling me, one of the things that went wrong in the financial crisis, right, was the breaking of the buck, that big money market fund. Yep. And the reason why Lehman triggered it, right? Because the money market fund had some amount of Lehman paper. People didn't know how much Lehman paper was in the money market fund, but they got nervous, right? And everyone tries to withdraw their money at the same time. Yeah. And Byron's point to me at that point was, well, one of the improvements of crypto is that you have transparency, right? So you can see all this stuff, so it shouldn't work. But so UST breaks its peg, and suddenly all these completely unrelated pegs come under fire. So Tether, the Tether peg almost broke yesterday as well, and it's still wobbling. It's wobbling a lot. Then another completely unrelated peg, right? Luna, ETH to Steve,
Yeah.
right? Which is
Yep.
the staked ETH liquid staking derivative that's offered by Lido. It's still off its peg.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a great reminder of just exactly how irrational humans are. And when fear grips it, like people aren't rational actors.
Well, but
right?
I'm going to
It's just,
argue that was the other side. That's some greedy bastards thinking they can do the same thing. And so what you saw, and this just, you know how I feel about chart crimes, right? I hate chart crimes.
I do.
And
I know you do.
And so people were doing this, right? They're showing this big drop in the tether peg. I'm like, no, you can't have the axis be 0.02, right? You can't compare Luna dropping 99% and tether peg dropping 0.02. That's not, because if you go back in history, the tether peg has wobbled between 0.98 and 1.02 many times, not every day. But so the chart crimes, which then are trying to elicit something bad. So people say, well, I'll just get short this. And when it breaks, I'll make a lot of money. Not understanding the difference between a true stable coin that's actually backed by things. Now, the tether one is interesting because there have been a lot of accusations that, well, there's no there. There's no actual money in the bank. Well, let's think about this. How long has that FUD been going on? Like 5 years, 6 years? I don't know, a long time. At some point, it's either true or it's not.
I agree. You know what I have to do? We've talked about it on the show. I don't think that the people who've been calling for inflation for 20 years and finally got it right should not be allowed to do a victory lap. Oh, I'm sorry. I just think eventually you'll be right. And you know what? You know what has frustrated me like a little bit too? It's these tether truthers coming out and being like, see, I knew it. And it's like, guys, you were totally wrong on it. Completely wrong. You picked the wrong one, the wrong model. And I'm sorry, I just don't think you should be allowed to do a victory lap on this.
Anyone who's taken tether victory laps here, and look,
tether truthers are like,
I hope
they kill me.
That I don't live to regret this, and 2 weeks from now we find out there is no there. But
knock on wood.
But I don't believe that because it's a different model. And actually, I had family members call me up and say, hey, should I dump all my USDC? I'm like, no, stop. No, it's not the same thing. Or GUSD, not the same thing. So anyway,
it is what it is. We got one more story that I want to get your opinion on here because I want to go to public markets here for a second. Yeah. I want to talk actually about two stuff. I want to talk about Twitter and I want to talk about Coinbase. Yep. This is not, if you've been paying attention to Twitter, but I will say, not financial advice, whatever. I don't care about saying this. I top ticked the shit out of Coinbase. I bought it at like 412 is my cost basis. Literally.
Listen to Kramer. Let's go to 475. I know. 475.
He's a great analyst. And I bag held all the way down. But it's a great company. I really do love Coinbase. And they're trading right now at like, it's nuts. It's like they're just getting shellacked. I think their public market value is like below what they raised at in their last private round. I mean, they're trading at like a 3.5 times price to earnings. Like practically the amount of cash on their balance sheet, right? It's like a third of the stock's value plus their venture portfolio. They're basically trading at book value. I mean, it's been very surprising to me to see Coinbase get beat up this badly. And the bonds too. Do you see the 10-year bonds are like just in a nosedive right now as well? I mean,
people
nuts to me.
I shouldn't say this. Most investors, and I'm using that term in air quotes, particularly in the current market, aren't investors, right? The average person that bought coin didn't buy it because they could look at the balance sheet and understand how much cash they have. They didn't understand their revenue model. They just saw number go up and Kathy bought it and a bunch of venture capitalists made a bunch of money. And again, full disclosure, we were early investors. We still own some of it. We sold some, but we still own some and thinking about buying more actually. which is not our mandate, right? Because it's a public company and a private company. So I'm trying to figure out how I could do that. But long story short is what's happening here is a combination of a couple things. One, Kathy's under attack, right? The ARC sprung a leak, and the crazy part is money is still flowing in. Like people are still buying ARC, like all the way down, and net inflows, and it's just destroying capital. And so she's then, she's trying to buy shares, but then she's being forced to sell shares, and so I think that's part of it. The other part of it is there's a whole bunch of people, who were early private investors who did come finally off lock, and maybe they were holding it, and once it broke a certain level, they're like, okay, I'm done. So there's a combination of things, but it's actually not that different than the Amazon story, right? Amazon was $103 in 2001, and bubble, and then Enron broke and WorldCom broke, and the market started to collapse, and a bunch of the other tech companies, the bad tech companies, went to zero, and Amazon went down 94%, went to $6, and everybody gave it up as dead, and that's the one everybody famously says, well, you should hold on to the winning companies, and you should. And I'm very comfortable saying that Coinbase is going to be here a long time, and that CeFi is a really important thing, and that we're not all going to DeFi tomorrow. And but here's the thing: they are an exchange and kind of like a brokerage firm model, a little bit like a bank model, a little bit. And so a run is real. Like if everybody takes their coins out, that causes problems. And they're not rehypothecating and doing all this crazy lending stuff like a bank. So it's not like Knickerbocker Trust, which is going to go to zero, but it does hurt their future revenues if people don't trade and people don't deposit. And here's one thing, and I have great affinity for and admiration of Brian, the CEO.
Me too.
But I would say he's not, and I'm trying to say this as positively as I can. He's not an amazing communicator. And look, maybe I should I'm the same way. I'm a great broadcast marketer. I suck at Q&A because I get emotional. When someone asks me a hard question or criticizes me, I get emotional. And my wife says, you have bad resting bitch face. And so, and Sheryl Sandberg had the same problem, right? When she would do the quarterly calls for Facebook, she would read. She had no intonation. She had no personality. And she's a very nice person, has personality.
But Facebook just needed a good communicator.
Needed a good communicator.
Christ almighty. Why didn't someone say that? Like, hey, Mark and Cheryl, step out.
No, step out. And the same thing, Brian needs, and someone, there was this guy I watched at the Strategic Investment Conference, John Malden's thing. And this guy talked about Benioff versus the CEO of IBM. So over the last 9 years, Salesforce up and to the right, and IBM lost money. Actually not that different. In fact, you could argue that IBM actually makes some money, and Salesforce talks about adjusted EBITDA. But 4 times a year, Mark goes on Kramer, and he showed a graph that all the return came in the couple weeks after those television appearances, and all the other times of the year, like 11 months of the year, the stock was flat. Because he's this amazing communicator. Even if what he's saying is kind of gobbledygook, like community adjusted EBITDA. That's just not a real thing. But if you say it and you sell the narrative, and I give Ben, and this was Ben from, what's his blog? Anyway, I'll remember it. But he was right. And the IBM woman never went on television, not once in 9 years. And so people didn't get to hear the story, and so they just sold. And so I think what Coinbase really needs right now is they need a really effective communicator to tell the vision, to tell the story, and not pick fights on Twitter with the SEC would be my advice. But he's way more, no, I'm not saying anything negative about Brian. He's done a great job and built a great business, and I'm a huge supporter. But I do think communication is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, look, I have a tremendous amount of empathy for Brian. It's clearly a great founder and CEO. And, I was talking to Jason the other day. I was like, obviously it's been great. I mean, he's made a lot of money and is very successful. But like, here's my interpretation of Brian's last 2 years, right? Like starting in 2020. Hey, this is great. Crypto market is starting to pick back up. People understand this isn't a scam. Inflows coming in. It's all good for about 6 months. Then it gets crazy. Then all of these protocols start hiring. They start giving fake equity. By the way, my heart goes out to people who took because we also competed for talent with people who were like, yeah, this protocol is giving me a $2 million equity grant.
Yeah.
That is not a $2 million equity. So he's competing with that. They can't retain talent, right? Then it's like the SEC starts calling, and now it's all starting to turn over. It's like, honestly, out of the last 2 years, I bet that guy's had like 3 good months. Like, if that. And now his stock's getting shellacked on the way down, and it doesn't deserve it. And my heart just goes out to you. I have a lot of empathy for the guy.
Bezos, he is a visionary. He saw the vision early, and he will persevere, and he will get through this, and the company will get through this, and it will be the $42 that it traded at for like 5 minutes the other day was probably the generational low. And I think people who buy it and tuck it in a drawer will be very happy.
I agree. Yeah. I'm looking at it today. We're recording this obviously on Friday, but it's up like 15% pre-market. I just didn't deserve to be where I was.
Didn't know that, but
yeah,
good to know.
Yeah.
Probably all the people watching this, through spying on us on the internet that are buying it.
I want to say this, not financial advice. But I just looked at this and like, I have to say it's a great company, and I don't know, not financial advice, whatever. Yeah. You heard it from me too. I top ticked it too. Last story that I wanted to get your thoughts on here, and I know we're running low on time, is the Tesla purchase. So there's this story, the headline coming out of Bloomberg is Elon Musk seeks to scrap Tesla margin loan with new Twitter funding, right? So it's up to $6 billion in preferred equity for Twitter. And there's that margin loan originally. If you remember, the way that Elon came up with this was there were a couple of different parts of that financing, right? And a huge part of that was this $12.5 million margin loan, which he collateralized something like $60 billion of Tesla stock against. And then, last week we talked about this kind of investor list, right? They came out as like, these are actually equity commitments. And there's some interesting names like CZ was on there for like 500 million. Larry Ellison was good for $1 billion. And he raised about $7 billion, I think, in equity commitments. I think a couple interesting things here. One, if I was Elon, I'd be getting a little worried about the value of of Tesla, right? This is not a knock on Tesla. The whole market is taking a bath, obviously, right now. Two, I will say, people are like, hey, there are no big private equity investors on this loan. I will say in this new financing, it looks like Apollo and Sixth Street, are potentially involved, and that would kind of check that box. Yep. But also for Elon's, funnily enough, it's like if you look at the performance of tech stocks year to date, Twitter's outperformed all of them. And the reason why is because this bid is single-handedly supporting the value of Twitter.
Yes, it is.
Like, if you're Elon, I don't know how this works, but I mean, you could make an argument that it should be worth less than he bid at, if it wasn't for his bid, Twitter, where would Twitter be sitting today? Wouldn't be at $40. Nope. That's what I'm telling you. Like, it'd be way lower than that. Yep. So, but it is interesting that he's seeking to move away from the margin loan. I think it's smart.
I mean, how many times has he pledged shares to secure financing for all kinds of different things? And look, I'm not a forensic accountant, so I haven't gone through the books to see how cooked or uncooked they are. But there is a point, and I think we're rapidly approaching it, where someone's going to ask that question.
Shoot, Mark. I'm sorry. I just saw this. So as of 3 hours ago, as of 6 o'clock this morning, Elon tweeted that the bid for Twitter is on hold. The deal for Twitter is on hold. He's still committed, but he wants to know more about the amount of fake accounts.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Michael, you are prophetic. You are prophetic.
That's pretty wild, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm finding this out obviously in real time, but that should not be. That's pretty crazy. Here's another lesson too of the Do Kwon UST thing that I'll say. Do Kwon, there haven't been many defenders of Do Kwon since this has come out. I don't know the guy personally. Nope. I've interacted with him kind of a couple times indirectly through Blockworks. I have nothing bad to say on a personal level, but I mean, people are coming out with these screenshots of things that he said on Twitter,
yep.
Right? And look, there's no two ways about this. He was kind of a dick to people on Twitter. And this just kind of shows you when you're on the top, you got to remember to be graceful, because if there's a time, and usually there is, no matter how high you are, you have to eat some medicine. And it's like, yeah, dude, no one's coming out to defend. And
karma is a bitch, and it's real. And just treat people with respect. And I don't understand. I mean, I've never understood the zero-sum thing. Like, why do you have to make somebody feel worse so you can feel better? I've never understood that. Live in a positive sum world.
Joe Rogan said this, I think, a little while. It's like, happy people don't sit on YouTube and type mean comments. And it's true, they don't. Like, if you're happy, you just don't do it. I mean, you're like, whatever, brother. You know, like, you do you. It's unhappy people who are like, you said this.
Yeah.
You know, I really genuinely, I think whenever I see people reacting like that, I am like, something's going on internally with you.
You know, and that is the right response, right? Geez, how can I help?
Yeah.
How can I help? I mean, obviously you're hurting. How can I help? And I don't mean, and I'm not saying in a condescending way. I mean, literally, like, something I can do, because, you know, and let's just finish on that point that there are a lot of people who are hurting right now, a lot.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize that. And it means mean stuff's going to come out. It means the people are going to fight. But we're all, I hate to say, we are all in this together. Right? All that other we're in this together, I don't believe in, but we are in this together. And as a community, we'll come out stronger. And you know, I appreciate your insight to put this together on a weekly basis, so we could, you know, try to help build the community and strengthen the community. And I am grateful to be a part of it with you.
I am too. And I got to give a shout out to our producer, Will Beaumont, who gives me a lot of great ideas for this roundup every week. So, Will,
thank you,
you're
Will.
the real one, my man. Appreciate you.
I do.
Mark, this has been a ton of fun. As always, I will see you here same time next week, my friend.
Good. Have a good weekend.
Cheers.